I got a lot of things I'm watching in week 4, and I would encourage you to watch them with me. Ohio State made an announcement today. Ryan Day, to put a finer point on it, the head coach there. They're playing Akron. I don't talk about Akron a whole lot, all due respect, but Kyle McCord is starting at quarterback. C.J. Stroud is being given the day off to rest an injured shoulder. And this has taken a baseball bat to the hornet's nest up in Columbus. A lot of people have a lot of things to say about this, and there's several different ways this can go. Because C.J. Stroud has not just lit the world on fire. I don't think he's played bad, but he has not met the expectation level that a lot of people set, whether it was falsely set or not. He has not met it yet. And so now this was going to be the game he got fat during. But instead he's not playing, and Kyle McCord's going to come in. Remember, this was a quarterback battle during camp. It was C.J. Stroud in the catbird seat the whole time, but this was a battle. Didn't get technically decided until a week or two before the season started. So anyway, there were people up there that whispered about Kyle McCord, and well, maybe he's the right guy for the job. Okay, with that being the backdrop, I want you to understand something about Akron. This is as close to throwing the ball against air as any FBS team will come. This is one of the worst pass defenses you will ever see. There is zero doubt that this is going to be a complete blowtorch job that Kyle McCord is able to execute. Even if they don't let him throw the ball a lot, it's still going to be a torch job. There should be zip codes between some of these Ohio State receivers and their nearest defender. So that's going to happen. It's a fact that Kyle McCord's going to look really good this Saturday. There are several ways this can go. Okay, here's what I think I know about Ohio State. I think it's a fact that C.J. Stroud has had some consistency issues. I think it's also a fact that Ryan Day chose him for a reason. And I think the reason is because he knows a whole lot more than I or you do about Ohio State football and how to win, namely, and he viewed him as the best guy for the job that gave them the best chance to do that. But here's now the speculation that seeps in. If C.J. Stroud is struggling due to injury, then what kind of injury are we talking about? They are notoriously tight-lipped up there. All we know is it's like a sore shoulder, but you really don't know what that means. If this were just something where he's got an ingrown toenail and it's not something that develops his passing, well, when he's good, he's good. But if Kyle McCord lights the world on fire, spoiler alert, he will Saturday, and C.J. Stroud is still slow to mend, boy, it could really put you in a little predicament trying to make a decision as to who's your starter week to week, and that's the last place a coaching staff wants to be. That's why there are consequences to success. It has been a success to win to the degree that Ohio State has. It's a success to recruit to the degree they have. But now you get to suffer a consequence of your success, and that is having all this quarterback depth. It's a good thing, but that doesn't make it easy to handle or manage. So watch that. You know, when Ohio State's up 55-3 at probably halftime, and you look at that stat line, is it going to be, we don't care, he did it against Akron, or it's undeniable even if it is against Akron? You'll see. That tone will change at Ohio State. How about Texas? Texas, we already talked about earlier in the show. Texas welcomes in Texas Tech into Austin Saturday. The line on this thing's about 7 or 7.5. Texas has been wonderful this year on third down offensively. They've made the quarterback switch too. It is Casey Thompson's job now. It was Hudson Card. We saw the change get made at Arkansas. We saw Casey Thompson last week light rice on fire. Don't lose to food. And so, boy, they need it this week. They need to be razor efficient on third down. They need to keep Texas Tech off the field. There is a great unknown in the Big 12, and that is how good is Texas Tech? You remember we talked about them in August. I told you I had a staffer out there in the Big 12 tell me a lot of folks around here are cutting an eye over at Lubbock because they got a lot of size at receiver. We think they're really good. They ended up, we think, striking gold in the quarterback transfer market with Tyler Shuck from Oregon. So they got a starting caliber quarterback from the transfer portal. But we don't know how good they are because they haven't played anyone yet, but they've done what they're supposed to against inferior competition. And all of a sudden they're coming in here this week. And it's one of those where so many people are uneasy around Texas. Like you think, oh, if we do our job, we'll win. But you also wonder, how long can we be this efficient on third down? And what if we go 6 for 14 on third down this week and they end up being the one that's more efficient there? Do they end up beating us? Well, here's how you avoid that. The way you avoid it is you do to Texas Tech what Arkansas did to you. Because what Texas Tech has not seen is a running game, the likes of which you should be able to put on the field. In fact, you should own both lines of scrimmage, if we're being honest with ourselves. Just run the ball and then run it some more and run it some more. If you want to talk about the best formula to make sure that Texas Tech is neutralized, it's them not being on the field. And you have direct say over that because of the run game you have. 7-point spread. Keep an eye on it. Florida versus Tennessee. The last time you saw Florida, obviously, they were that close. They were trying to convert 2 points to probably send the Alabama game into overtime. Well, it fell short. So what does that mean? You don't know. No one knows. This game is where we start to learn what that close loss against Alabama meant for Florida. We've seen teams go in the tank after those kinds of games. We've seen teams explode after those kinds of games. It's up to Florida. And this is one where, if you're a Florida fan, you know what I'm about to say. Todd Grantham's defense has struggled against tempo. It is well documented, it's well chronicled, and so it's kind of the same formula as we just talked about with Texas and Texas Tech. Here's what you do know if you're Florida. You know you can run the ball. You know your offensive line had the best game under John Hevesy to date last week against Alabama. Do more of it. Blow them off the ball. You got advantages in team speed, and you got advantages on the lines of scrimmage. Take advantage of it. That's exactly how you beat Tennessee, and exactly how, not just beat them, but that's how you stifle this whole upset alert early, and you end up cruising to a win. That would be impressive, because you're going to have a lot of let's throw it against the wall and see what sticks kind of approach for Tennessee this week. You don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be yet. Could be Hendon Hooker, could be Joe Milton. Colin doesn't even know. So I surely don't know. But the speed and the edge in the run game, it should be good enough for Florida. They can't be messing around and turning the ball over. You can't sleepwalk against this kind of team because they'll run 17 plays on you in the first quarter before you've even batted an eye. Can't afford to do that. Florida needs a fast start. What about Clemson at North Carolina State? We didn't break this one down the other night. You know, Clemson opened, I think, as a 12-point favorite. They're a 10-point favorite now. This is on the road. It's hard to believe that this is Clemson. What they've been so far. It's hard to believe this is just them. I find it really hard to believe with the level of raw team talent they have, there's not another gear they're going to hit. Now, it may not be a gear that's on par with what they've been in the past offensively, but you know there's one team out there. I think this is right. I think there's one FBS team that hasn't allowed a touchdown yet offensively, and it's that team in orange. I mean, they've been dominant defensively. Now, what's interesting is you listen to Brent Venables after last week against Georgia Tech, and you listen to Dabo Swinney, and he said, we had tons of mistakes defensively. You guys don't know because we didn't have to pay for them. But just because we didn't pay for them doesn't mean they weren't there. Now, that's something to file away, because I don't think they're lying about that. It just so happens that Georgia Tech didn't make them pay for it. So tuck that away, because I don't necessarily know if this is the offense that'll make them pay for it either. But I will tell you this. If you think that what you saw NC State do or not do against Mississippi State has much bearing in this game, you're probably wrong. You probably hadn't watched much college football in your life. This is pure Super Bowl mode for North Carolina State. All the focus is on this Clemson offense. But you got a defense you know you can lean on. Problem for Clemson is NC State feels the same way right now. Dabo said earlier this week, and I agree, that it's probably the most athletic, maybe even the best flat-out offensive line that they'll play all year. And he's including Georgia in that statement. So, you know, maybe there are some plays to be had against Clemson. We just haven't seen someone properly equipped to do it so far. This is one I think that will be close. Now, our model tends to like Clemson to cover. Boy, it's hard. You know, it's something that I looked at and I said, interesting. I think I'll go elsewhere this week. Keep an eye on that. That's a 3:30 kickoff. North Carolina at Georgia Tech, kinda. North Carolina is going to Atlanta. They're not going to Grant Field. They're playing this one in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. A lot of conjecture out there about who will actually have the home field advantage in terms of overall attendance numbers. North Carolina will be well represented there, I can tell you that. This is kind of step 2 for North Carolina's redemption tour. They're not calling it that yet, but we got to label everything. So I'm going to call it a redemption tour. You lost to Virginia Tech. Unlike some of these other teams that lost in week 1, that's a conference loss. So you're already behind the 8 ball in conference play. That's okay as long as you get your act together. Do they have their act together? Is that Virginia sample size, in other words, is that enough to show us everything we need to know? Well, I think what happened last week with Georgia Tech versus Clemson did both of these teams favors. It showed Georgia Tech, maybe we have taken steps forward. Maybe we can compete with the best. But it also probably did Mac Brown a huge favor because it grabbed his entire team by the shoulders. It shook them and said, do you see this team right here? This is not a pushover now. They almost beat Clemson last week. It's not a pushover. And Mac Brown probably didn't have to do anything other than pop on the tape and then just kind of look around with a toothpick in his mouth. So I think you'll get the best effort from both teams. Chunk plays. That's what to pay attention to here. Chunk plays. Because North Carolina had a ton of them against Virginia last week. Georgia Tech doesn't give up a whole lot of them. And so it's very interesting if this becomes what we call a bear trap game. And that is you buy into a team that's putting up crooked numbers offensively, but it is so heavily predicated on explosive plays that when you face a team that can kind of Barry Odom you to death, give up the underneath stuff, but they take away the deep stuff, eventually they bear trap you. And you get bored settling for the underneath stuff. And you fall into the trap they've set, and they end up +3 turnovers, beating you 27-26. If Georgia Tech's to win this game, that's probably how they pull it off. Offensively, it's not a David, or it's not a Goliath kind of deal, but it could be a bear trap game. There is a path for Georgia Tech to win this thing. The line's under 2 touchdowns. It's about 12.5 right now, so keep an eye on that one. There are so many more games. Iowa State is a 7-point favorite at Baylor. Be careful. Again, that's one where Iowa State, they're in tight figure skater mode, can't afford another loss. How about Kentucky, favored by 5 at South Carolina? Rutgers is going to Michigan. Michigan's favored by 20. We may very well get on Rutgers by the time kickoff happens on the Ramen Noodle Express. Kansas State's headed to Oklahoma State. That's under a touchdown spread. Michigan State under a touchdown favorite against Nebraska. There are a lot of games on this undercard that bear close watching this Saturday. Again, as always, don't let them tell you it is a Saturday to overlook. Don't let them tell you this is the one that we can go to the hardware store on. This is the one we can go to our cousin's wedding on. No, no, no.